Hi everyone, welcome to my channel. Thank you for tuning in. Today I'll be teaching you how to make a crop jacket with Ankara fabric. Let's move right along and we'll have a good time. So the first thing I'm going to do is using my pattern sheet. I create my starting point with my ruler. I insert my neck width, which is just about 3 inches, and then the shoulder length, my shoulder divided by 2, and I mark it right there. Then I'm going to mark my neck depth, which is about 3 inches. From there on, I use my French curve to create a nice curve around the neck. Then I'm going to use my ruler. I'm drawing my shoulder slant like so, and then my sleeve depth, armhole depth, and then I put in my chest line like so. I mark that is my bust divided by 4. So my armhole depth, I'm going to be dividing it by 2, and then I'll be going in by 1 inch. You may decide to use half an inch. This is just to create the armhole curve, like I'm sure you might already know. And then I'm using my French curve, of course, to create the armhole. At this point, I left a 1 inch allowance on my pattern sheet, and you'll soon know why I did that. I have marked the base of my crop jacket like so. That's just the length of your crop jacket. And at this point, I'm marking my waistline, which is my shoulder to waist measurement. I've created the waistline, and I've put in my waist divided by 4, and I've added 1 inch for my dart allowance. So I'm joining the side, okay, and then I'm inserting the base of my crop jacket, which is probably my hip measurement, or you can use your hip measurement. Now I'm using my nipple to nipple measurement to mark where my darts are going to be. So what I'm doing here is just creating a basic bodice block. And of course, I'm putting in my darts, which is 12 inches from the shoulder point and right down to the base of the jacket. I'm using my French curve now to create that line from the armhole curve. Now I'm adding 0.25 inches around the neck. Look at that carefully. I'm altering my basic bodice block. I've used my French curve now, and I'm creating a new neck curve. The same thing I'm doing at the shoulder, that is just 0.25 inches. I've increased that. I'm creating a new shoulder line like so. Beautiful. Then at the edge too, I'm going to be increasing the armhole by 0.25 inches. Now watch this. I'll start increasing by 0.25. We're going to alter the entire armhole. Now I get to the base of the armhole right there. I'm coming down by half an inch and going outward by half an inch. Look at that. With that, I'm going to create an entirely new armhole curve. This half inch I added is for ease on your crop jacket. Look at that. That's the new armhole line. I'm adding half an inch all round. Note that I'm not adding sewing allowance to the pattern sheet yet. I'll do that on the fabric. So I join the points and I'm marking my pattern sheet A and B just so that I don't get mixed up. Now I am going to also add half an inch in front of the jacket. Okay, look at that. Just join it and then you cut out your pattern sheet. Beautiful. Cut out the dots and there you go. So the back pattern sheet is simply the basic bodice block you're going to put out. You can watch my video on how to draft the basic bodice block. I am simply creating a dot at the back, the midpoint of the back. I'm joining the sides. If you watch my video on how to create a basic bodice block for the back, it's just simply the same thing you will first have to do. Okay, and then I'm marking the dots. Of course, the dart from the shoulder, I'll stop at 9 inches. The dart is 1 inch wide, so I'm just going to use my ruler to create the dart like so. Draw the lines forming a triangle. And then I'll begin to alter this back bodies just like I've done to the front. So of course, from the midpoint of the armhole depth, we're going to join that using the French curve, and then I'll be enlarging, or rather altering this pattern 0.25 inches to create a new neckline like I did for the front pattern. And of course, for the shoulder as well, 0.25 inches. I'll use my ruler to draw a new shoulder line, and then we're going to get to the armhole and we'll do the same thing we did for the front. Okay, I'm marking 0.25 outward again, increasing that. What I did here is, of course, I've started cutting, but I'm going to pause now and still alter this pattern because I haven't completed altering the armhole like we did for the front. I'll be coming down by 1/2 inch and outward by 1/2 inch, just like what I did in the front, and we've created a new armhole curve. And then I cut out. I'm labeling my patterns A and B, like you can see. Now we're going straight to the fabric, and then on the fabric I'll be adding my sewing allowance, 1/2 inch around the front, and probably by the side I'll add just 1 inch sewing allowance. At the base will be 1/2 inch as well. And there you go, we've cut out our patterns. I'll remove the papers now, and then we begin to, of course, we cut out our linings using the same pattern. Look at that, that's exactly the same. I've joined the back, and then I'm going to begin to join the side patterns accordingly. This is the one for the back. I left the 1 inch allowance at the middle of the back. Then I'm joining my sides, and that is how it came out, looking beautiful. Iron the stitches down. For the front, I'll be using the same fabric to cut out the facing for the front. I'm not going to use lining immediately. I'm cutting out the facing, and I've put on it cloth gum. Some people decide to use gum stay, but I use cloth gum. So I'm going to cut out a pattern. I'm drawing it from the shoulder. It's going to just be about 4 inches wide, like so. And then I use my ruler to join at the base. The facing is just about 3 inches wide. I'm going to cut 2 of these and put on them cloth gum. This will form the lining because I don't want your lining to be showing immediately up behind your jacket. We should see the fabric first before the lining. So this is my fabric. Placed on it is cloth gum, and I'm sewing at 1/2 inch. Look at that. So this little bit left here, I'm going to be sewing lining now to it. So I have a tricky way of doing that. I just pin on a piece of lining. I'm going to trace it along the line where it's supposed to be sewn using my chalk. Of course, I pinned it. This is just so that I'll get an accurate bit to cover that left over with lining. Look at, I'm marking right where my fabric stops, and then I'm going to leave a 1/2 inch sewing allowance for this. Once I do that, like so, 1/2 inch, I'll cut out, and if I sew along this line now, I am going to get a beautiful piece of lining covering this. Just watch that. I'll pin it neatly, and I will sew like so. Once I've done that, look at that excess bit. It covers nicely. I'll iron that down and then cut out. So the last bit is covered with lining, and the other bit is covered with fabric. So this is just my own tricky way of covering up a little bit. Look at that. That is the lining at the edge. So the facing is both fabric and lining. Then you pin in this bit, the side of the jacket, like so, and sew at 1/2 inch sewing allowance. Once I've done that, I'll be taking the back and the front. Look at that. I made an interface with the fabric. That's optional. Now I'm going to be pinning in the shoulders together, making sure the points meet, fabric to fabric, lining to lining. So I'm going to go pin it all through and sew at 1/2 inch sewing allowance, and then I'll show you that. Look at that. coming out nicely. Our jacket is joined. So the next thing we're going to have to do is to join the sides. I left a 1-inch sewing allowance, and I'm going to sew right down both the lining to lining, fabric to fabric. That's the way we're going. So I'll sew down. My hands are not exempted. I made the lining shorter by just 1/2 inch. I'm going to fold over like so and sew the sides together at just 1/2 inch. Then after that, I'll be attaching that to the sleeves. Now look at this. I left a space at the side. Why? That will help us to turn the jacket eventually, because we want our work to be really neat. I'm going to turn now, and I'll be closing up the base of the crop jacket. Look at that. I'll be closing up the entire base, but note this, at the beginning of the crop jacket right there, I'll be closing that place by 1 inch. Pin your work all through, pin all through, and look at right there I'll be stopping at 1/2 inch, but the beginning will be 1 inch, 1/2 inch there, and then it will have a slant. There is a reason for this. The rest of the jacket will be closed at 1/2 inch. Please take note. Beginning is 1 inch. At that point where the facing stops is going to be 1/2 inch, and then you continue 1/2 inch all through. It's going to make the jacket straight at the bottom. Now we're fixing the sleeves. By turning over, we have to do it from the inside because I want inside the jacket to be completely neat. I'm going to pin it all through, lining to lining, fabric to fabric. Make sure the right hand is fixed on the right side, the left hand on the other side. Pin it neatly, and we'll be sewing it round at 1/2 inch sewing allowance. Look at that. I'll just go around very carefully. Now I'm going to pin the lining to the lining of the jacket, the lining of the sleeve rather. Once that is done, this is the last point, and we'll just sew it neatly on top to close. That is where all the turning has been going on. Don't forget this tricky thing we did. We started at 1 inch, slanted to 1/2 inch at the beginning of the facing, right? From that point, you begin to fold slanting gently, 1/2 inch, 1/2 inch fold. This will take in all the excess of the lining. I'll use my iron to fold that 1/2 inch inward on the lining. This makes your lining not to fall out. Some people decide to use hand stacking to hold that in place. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you learned something. Bye bye.